People often believed that money could solve any problem. When they talked about the billionaire, they said the same thing. He owned tall buildings, private jets, and companies spread across countries. His name appeared in magazines and news articles. To the outside world, his life looked perfect. But behind the glass walls and guarded gates, there was a problem no amount of money could fix. His daughter was the one everyone whispered about. She lived in luxury, but peace never lived with her. From a young age, she showed signs that something inside her was broken. She pushed people away, spoke with anger, and refused to follow rules. Expensive toys did not make her smile. Private schools could not keep her calm. Tutors quit, nannies left, and counselors failed one after another. Each person came in confident and left tired, confused, and defeated. At school, she was labeled difficult. At home, she was called impossible. No one truly listened to her. Most adults spoke at her, not with her. They tried to control her behavior instead of understanding her pain. When she acted out, they blamed her attitude. When she stayed silent, they blamed her mood. Slowly, she learned that no one really cared to hear what she felt. Her father tried to help, but his life was built around power and speed. Meetings, calls, flights, and deals filled his days. He believed providing the best money could buy was enough. When problems came up, he hired experts. When those experts failed, he replaced them. What he didn't realize was that his daughter didn't need another expert. She needed time. She needed presence. Inside the large mansion, silence often felt louder than noise. The rooms were big, clean, and beautiful, but they felt cold. The daughter spent most of her time alone. She avoided family dinners and ignored staff. Some days she stayed locked in her room for hours. Other days she exploded in anger over small things. Broken items were replaced quickly, but broken feelings were ignored. Each failure added to her reputation. Staff members warned new hires about her. Teachers shared stories in low voices. Some even refused to work with her at all. The word hopeless began to follow her wherever she went. Not far from that world of wealth, another life moved quietly. A single father woke up before sunrise every day. His alarm rang at the same time each morning, even on weekends. He prepared a simple breakfast, packed a small lunch, and made sure his child was ready for school before leaving for work. His job was cleaning floors, emptying trash, and fixing small things that no one else wanted to deal with. He was a janitor. He didn't complain about his work. To him, it was honest. It paid the bills and kept food on the table. His life was not easy, but it was real. He knew struggle, loss, and responsibility. Raising a child alone had taught him patience in ways nothing else could. He had learned to listen carefully, speak gently, and stay calm even when things went wrong. At work, most people barely noticed him. Some walked past without eye contact. Others greeted him politely but quickly. He wore simple clothes and carried his cleaning tools from one hallway to another. He saw everything but was rarely seen. The building he worked in was connected to the billionaire's world. It held offices, meeting rooms, and private spaces used by powerful people. The janitor cleaned after long meetings and late nights. He heard laughter, arguments, and silence. He understood something many ignored, that money did not remove pain. It only hid it better. One afternoon, while cleaning a quiet corridor, he noticed something unusual. The billionaire's daughter was sitting alone on the floor near a large window. She wasn't shouting or breaking anything. She wasn't surrounded by staff. She was just sitting there, staring outside, completely still. Most people would have walked away. Some would have called security. Others would have informed a manager. The janitor didn't do any of that. He slowed his steps and kept his distance. He didn't speak right away. He simply continued his work quietly, not making her feel watched. After a few minutes, she looked up. Her eyes met his for a second. There was no anger in her face, only tiredness. He nodded politely, the way he nodded to everyone, and went back to cleaning. That small moment passed without words, but something about it felt different. Later that day, she caused another issue. A meeting was interrupted. Staff rushed in, frustrated and embarrassed. Voices rose. Accusations flew. The usual chaos followed. People sighed, some shook their heads, and others muttered that nothing would ever change. From a distance, the janitor watched. He didn't judge her. He saw a child overwhelmed by emotions she didn't know how to control. He saw pain hiding behind anger. It was something he recognized. That evening, when he returned home, he helped his own child with homework, cooked a simple meal, and listened to stories about school. He paid attention, even when he was tired. He knew how much it mattered. Back at the mansion, the billionaire sat alone in his office. Another report lay on his desk. Another recommendation for a new specialist. Another failure added to the list. For the first time, he felt helpless. All his power meant nothing in front of his daughter's pain. The daughter, meanwhile, lay awake in her room, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed the day. The shouting, the looks, the disappointment, and strangely, the quiet janitor who didn't treat her like a problem. She didn't know why that moment stayed with her. He hadn't asked questions. He hadn't given orders. He hadn't looked afraid or angry. He had simply existed near her without trying to change her. The next morning, as the building slowly came to life, paths were about to cross again. No one expected it. No one planned it. And no one believed that a man who cleaned floors could be the one to change. A story everyone else had given up on. But sometimes, the most important changes begin in silence. With people the world refuses to notice. The next day started like any other, with the building slowly coming to life. Staff moved quickly, conversations echoed through the hallways, and meetings were held in the quiet hum of business. The billionaire's daughter was awake early, pacing her room, restless. Something about yesterday stayed with her, though she couldn't understand why. The memory of the janitor, calm and unnoticed, lingered in her mind. He had not acted like everyone else. He had not judged her. For reasons she didn't yet know. That small interaction intrigued her. The janitor started his day as usual, cleaning floors, emptying trash, and checking that everything was in order. His work was unnoticed by most, as it always had been, but he moved through the building with quiet purpose. He was aware of the daughter's presence, not because he had been told to watch her, but because he had noticed her distress and cared in a simple, human way. There was no grand plan, no agenda, just an understanding that some people needed attention without being forced or controlled. Mid-morning, an incident occurred that could have escalated quickly. The daughter, frustrated by a canceled outing, slammed the door to her room, startling the staff nearby. A tutor approached her cautiously, raising a voice meant to command her attention. She yelled back, tears mixing with anger, and the tutor stepped back, defeated. This was the scene that repeated almost every day. Adults attempting control, and the daughter reacting with defiance and hurt. The janitor was nearby, performing routine checks in the hallway. He paused, noticing the tension in the air. Instead of interfering, he waited until the daughter calmed slightly. Then he spoke softly, without a hint of judgment, asking if she wanted to help him carry a bucket to a different room. The question was simple and ordinary, but it surprised her. No one had ever asked her to participate without demanding obedience or threatening consequences. She stared at him, unsure how to respond. Finally, curiosity outweighed caution, and she followed him. The task was small, mundane even, but it allowed her to focus on something else. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of control without fear of punishment. The janitor did not correct her, did not lecture, and did not push her. He simply allowed her to engage, and she noticed how calm his presence made her feel. Over the next several days, these small interactions continued. The daughter began to follow him occasionally, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The janitor never pushed for more than she could handle. He listened more than he spoke and respected her boundaries. Slowly, the tension that always surrounded her began to ease when he was near. Staff noticed the change, whispering among themselves. "She seems quieter around him," one said. Another shrugged. "It can't last," someone else warned. Meanwhile, the daughter's father remained busy with his work. Calls, meetings, and decisions filled his day. He received reports about his daughter's behavior, each more troubling than the last. He hired more specialists, changed schedules, and tried to enforce rules, but nothing seemed to make a difference. He didn't notice the janitor, or the small moments that were starting to matter most. The janitor's own life continued, as it always had. After his shifts, he returned home, prepared dinner, helped his child with homework, and shared stories about the day. He never spoke about the daughter at work or at home. To him, these interactions were not a story to tell, but a responsibility to care quietly and sincerely. One afternoon, the daughter did something no one expected. She invited the janitor to walk with her in the garden. Staff watched from a distance, surprised and skeptical. They whispered among themselves, guessing that perhaps she was trying to manipulate him, or that the situation would quickly end in tears. But nothing of the sort happened. The daughter walked beside him, asking questions about the garden, about small details she had never noticed before. He answered calmly, giving her room to express herself without judgment. It was a small step, but it was monumental. The garden walks became a routine. The daughter looked forward to them, and the janitor provided stability and understanding. They did not discuss her problems directly at first. Instead, they shared small stories, observed nature, and engaged in quiet conversation. The simplicity of these moments allowed trust to grow where none had existed before. Staff members continued to be skeptical. They questioned his motives, his influence, and whether a janitor had the right to affect a child of wealth and status. Yet, they could not deny the change they saw in her behavior. She was calmer, less explosive, and more willing to participate in her day-to-day activities. The progress was subtle but noticeable. The daughter herself began to experience new emotions. She discovered that she could be heard without fear of punishment, and that someone could genuinely care without expecting anything in return. She had not felt this way in years. Her mind, often clouded with anger and frustration, began to feel lighter. The janitor had not offered advice or solutions. He had only offered presence and patience. And that was enough. Word of their bond eventually reached the father, though indirectly. A staff member mentioned that she seemed happier around the janitor. The father was skeptical. How could someone without power, wealth, or authority make an impact where specialists had failed? But the thought lingered in his mind. For the first time, he considered that maybe, just maybe, there was more to helping his daughter than money, and professionals. As the days turned into weeks, their connection deepened. The daughter began to confide in the janitor in small ways. She spoke of her frustrations, her loneliness, and her fears. He listened without interruption, without judgment, without trying to fix things instantly. His responses were simple, often just a nod or a gentle word. But they meant more to her than any lecture or punishment ever had. A turning point came when she faced a situation that would have normally triggered a severe outburst. Something minor went wrong in her routine, and in the past, it would have led to yelling, destruction, or withdrawal. But this time, she paused. She looked for the janitor, saw him nearby, and remembered the calm he had shown her. She took a deep breath and handled the situation differently. It was a small victory, but it was a sign of real change. The janitor continued his work, never boasting, never taking credit. To him, success was measured in these small moments. The child he once observed with frustration and fear was beginning to feel safe, understood, and capable. He understood that real progress was slow and required patience, empathy, and consistency. He never tried to rush her or impress anyone. He only focused on being present. The daughter's father began to notice subtle changes as well. She was less confrontational, more willing to engage in conversation, and occasionally smiled without being prompted. These small signs gave him hope, though he still did not fully understand the source. He continued to hire specialists, but he began to watch quietly, observing the child's progress in ways he never had before. The bond between the janitor and the daughter became the center of a quiet transformation. While the world focused on wealth, power, and authority, the real change was happening through kindness, patience, and human connection. The daughter was learning that she could trust, that she could be understood, and that someone could care about her without expecting anything in return. As part 2 closes, it is clear that this connection is only beginning. The janitor and the daughter have crossed a threshold. She is starting to open her heart, and he continues to provide a safe space. Outside observers may not understand, but the smallest, simplest acts of attention and care are laying the foundation for a change that money could never buy. The story is moving quietly, powerfully, and in ways that no one had predicted. As the weeks passed, the bond between the janitor and the billionaire's daughter grew stronger, but not without challenges. People around them began to notice, and most of them did not approve. The staff whispered in hallways, wondering why a janitor seemed to have an effect that none of the highly trained professionals could achieve. Teachers, tutors, and nannies, who had once been frustrated by the daughter's behavior, felt uneasy. They couldn't understand how someone without authority or credentials could calm her, even if only temporarily. The daughter noticed the whispers, too. Some of them made her defensive. Others made her curious. She felt torn between loyalty to the janitor, who had begun to feel like a safe person in her life, and the rules of the adults around her. She wanted to spend time with him, but she also wanted to avoid trouble. Often, she watched from a distance, observing the reactions of staff and listening to hushed conversations. Unsure of how much she could trust the world around her, the janitor, on the other hand, remained steady. He did not argue with staff, defend himself, or demand recognition. He focused on what mattered, the child in front of him. He understood that their growing connection would not be accepted by everyone, and that some would try to create obstacles. He did not take it personally. For him, the work of being present and patient was more important than seeking approval. One afternoon, a serious incident occurred. The daughter had an argument with a staff member over a small issue. She shouted, slammed doors, and threw objects in frustration. Everyone expected the usual chaos, with the staff retreating and the child being reprimanded. But this time, the janitor intervened, not with authority, not with anger, but with calm words and steady presence. He asked her to take a deep breath and guided her to a quiet area, allowing her to release her emotions safely. The staff watched in silence, unable to comprehend how he handled the situation with such ease. This moment marked a turning point. The daughter realized that she could express her feelings without fear of punishment. She learned that someone could listen without judgment, and that it was possible to feel understood. For the janitor, it was another reminder that patience and empathy were more powerful than discipline or money. He didn't lecture or demand. He simply provided a safe space, and that was enough. Despite this progress, resistance remained. Some staff members began to challenge the janitor directly, questioning why he spent so much time with the daughter and whether it was appropriate for him to influence her behavior. They brought their concerns to management, hoping to put an end to what they considered an unusual situation. Rumors spread, creating tension in the building. Yet the janitor did not react with anger. He maintained his calm, focusing on his work and the child who depended on him. Meanwhile, the daughter faced her own struggles. She felt emotions she had long buried: vulnerability, trust, and curiosity. These feelings were new and confusing. She struggled with the desire to connect with the janitor while fearing the disapproval of others. Sometimes she tested boundaries, acting out to see if he would leave or punish her. Each time, he responded with patience and understanding, showing her that trust could be consistent and reliable. The janitor also began to understand the depth of her challenges. He recognized that her difficult behavior was a reflection of pain, not defiance. He recalled his own experiences as a single father, the mistakes he had made, and the lessons he had learned. He used that insight to guide his interactions, always careful to respect her feelings and give her space when needed. His approach was quiet but deliberate, and it slowly began to reshape the daughter's behavior and emotional state. As the bond grew, small victories became more frequent. She started participating in activities without resistance, followed simple instructions, and even began to express her feelings verbally instead of through anger. Staff noticed these changes, but often attributed them to luck or coincidence. They did not understand the role the janitor played, and he did not correct them. He was not seeking recognition. His goal was the child's well-being. The daughter's father remained busy with his work, but he began to notice subtle differences in his child's behavior. She was calmer, less defensive, and occasionally more willing to engage in conversation. He did not yet understand the source of the change, but he felt hope that had been missing for years. Reports from specialists were still coming in, but they were no longer the sole focus of his concern. He began to observe quietly, realizing that progress was happening in ways that money and authority could not influence. One evening, the daughter approached the janitor on her own. She wanted to talk about her day, her feelings, and the frustrations she had experienced. For the first time, she spoke openly, without fear of criticism. The janitor listened attentively, responding with gentle words and understanding. He encouraged her to express herself fully, reinforcing the lesson that emotions were valid and important. This conversation deepened their trust, creating a foundation for continued growth. Staff members continued to watch, some with skepticism and others with amazement. They saw the daughter's transformation, though they did not understand it. Her calmness, willingness to participate, and occasional smiles were undeniable. Yet the explanation remained elusive to those who valued credentials and authority above human connection. The janitor's approach was simple: presence, patience, and empathy. He never tried to impress anyone, and he never sought reward. He understood that trust could not be forced, and that real change required consistency and care. Each interaction with the daughter was intentional, designed to provide a sense of security and understanding. Slowly, this approach began to reshape not only her behavior, but her outlook on life. The daughter began to see the world differently as well. She realized that people could care without expecting anything in return. She discovered that trust was possible, and that her emotions could be acknowledged without judgment. These insights were profound for someone who had grown up in a world where money and authority had often replaced genuine human connection. For the first time, she felt a sense of belonging and acceptance that went beyond material possessions. Despite the challenges and resistance from staff, the janitor and the daughter continued their journey. Their bond became a quiet force within the building, unnoticed by many, but transformative for those involved. Each small victory reinforced the idea that true care and understanding could overcome obstacles that money, Authority and expertise could not dot as Part 3 comes to a close. The stage is set for further transformation. The bond between the janitor and the daughter is growing stronger, facing challenges but proving resilient. The lessons of patience, empathy, and presence are taking hold, and the world around them is beginning to take notice, even if they do not fully understand the power of this quiet connection. The story is unfolding slowly, deeply, and in a way that promises meaningful change for everyone involved. The weeks passed quietly, but the calm was fragile. Everyone in the building knew the daughter had changed, but no one understood how. Specialists were still trying to solve her behavior through strategies and schedules, but the real solution was unfolding in small, almost invisible moments with the janitor. The bond between them was growing stronger, but life had a way of testing even the strongest connections. One morning, a serious incident occurred that could have undone all the progress. The daughter received news she didn't like a canceled trip she had been looking forward to for weeks. Anger and disappointment overwhelmed her. She shouted, threw objects, and refused to listen to anyone. Staff members panicked, unsure how to calm her. They called for management, and the atmosphere in the building grew tense. Many assumed the janitor could do nothing this time, that her emotions were too powerful to control, but he did not react with fear or frustration. He approached slowly, carefully, giving her space while showing he was there. He spoke gently, asking simple questions about how she felt and what she needed. He didn't tell her to calm down or lecture her on behavior. Instead, he acknowledged her feelings, letting her know it was okay to feel upset. She stared at him, her anger mixing with confusion. No one had ever handled her emotions this way. The confrontation lasted for what felt like hours to the staff, but only minutes to the two of them. He guided her to a quiet corner of the room, away from the chaos. He listened as she spoke, vented, and cried. He never rushed her, never judged, never demanded. For the first time, she felt that someone truly understood her, that she could be honest without fear of punishment or ridicule. Outside observers, including the daughter's father, were beginning to notice the change. Reports from staff came in describing how she handled her emotions differently. She had not destroyed property, lashed out at staff, or withdrawn into silence. Instead, she had expressed her feelings in a controlled, understandable way. The father was surprised and slightly uneasy, unsure how to credit the janitor without seeming dismissive of the specialists he had hired. He realized that real change was happening outside the rules he was accustomed to. After that incident, the daughter's trust in the janitor deepened. She began to share more of her thoughts and fears, slowly letting him into her world. They discussed her frustrations, her loneliness, and her desire to feel understood. The janitor listened patiently, responding with kindness and guidance. He did not try to fix her problems instantly. He only showed her that she could navigate them with support. This turning point also revealed the daughter's own strength. She began to experiment with her behavior, testing her limits to see how the janitor would respond. She acted out at times, pushed boundaries, and challenged expectations. Each time he met her calmly, showing that her feelings were valid, but helping her make choices that were safer and more constructive. She learned that emotions could be expressed without fear, and that guidance could be gentle rather than forceful. The staff continued to struggle with the changes. Some were skeptical, believing that her improved behavior was temporary or coincidental. Others began to see the truth. The janitor's approach was working where expertise had failed. They whispered in hallways, questioning their own methods, and slowly began to adjust their expectations. The environment, once tense and controlled, began to feel more stable. More human. The daughter's father observed the changes quietly. He noticed subtle differences in her behavior. She spoke more freely, participated in activities she had previously avoided, and showed signs of emotional resilience. He realized that he had underestimated the value of presence, patience, and genuine connection. Specialists could provide strategies, schedules, and rules, but they could not replace the human touch that the janitor offered daily. This realization humbled him and gave him hope. One afternoon, the daughter approached the janitor with a request. She wanted to help him with his work, to be part of something simple and ordinary. He welcomed her involvement, giving her small tasks and instructions. She followed them carefully, feeling a sense of accomplishment and pride she had never experienced before. The tasks were mundane, but they mattered. She began to understand that responsibility and cooperation could be empowering, not threatening. These shared moments also allowed the janitor to teach subtle lessons about patience, empathy, and self-control. Through his example, the daughter began to see how small actions could have a big impact. She realized that kindness, understanding, and consistency were more powerful than anger or defiance. These lessons were not taught in a classroom or delivered by a professional. They were lived, modeled, and experienced firsthand. Meanwhile, the janitor's own life continued with its quiet routines. He remained a devoted father, balancing work, parenting, and his new responsibilities with grace and commitment. He never sought recognition for his efforts, never expected reward, and never allowed the attention to change him. His focus remained on providing a safe, supportive space for the daughter, showing her that trust and care could exist without conditions. The daughter's transformation began to extend beyond her interactions with the janitor. She applied what she learned in other settings, managing frustration more effectively and interacting with staff and peers in healthier ways. She still faced challenges, but the skills she developed through her bond with the janitor helped her navigate them. Her confidence grew, and with it, a sense of independence and resilience that had been missing for years. The turning point also affected the building's environment as a whole. Staff members noticed that tension and fear had decreased. Interactions became calmer, more respectful, and more supportive. The daughter's progress demonstrated that human connection could influence behavior in profound ways, challenging assumptions about power, authority, and expertise. Slowly, the culture of the space began to shift. The daughter's father took notice of these subtle but significant changes. He began to spend more time observing rather than controlling, allowing his daughter the space to grow and explore under the janitor's guidance. He realized that while money and influence could provide opportunities, they could not replace understanding, patience, and presence. This insight transformed his perspective, opening him to new possibilities for supporting his child. As Part 4 closes, the story reaches a critical moment. The daughter has faced a major emotional challenge and emerged stronger, guided by the janitor's calm and steady presence. Her trust in him has deepened, and her emotional growth is evident. The bond between them has become a powerful force, quietly transforming her life and the environment around her. The stage is set for the final part, where the impossible becomes real, and the lessons of patience, empathy, and human connection reach their full impact. Time moved forward, and the changes in the billionaire's daughter became more visible to everyone around her. The quiet moments with the janitor, the small acts of kindness, the calm conversations, and the steady patience all began to show results in her daily life. She was no longer consumed by anger or frustration. She could express her emotions in ways that others could understand. She was still learning, still growing, but the transformation was undeniable. Staff members who once doubted the janitor's influence began to see the truth. They watched as she navigated her day with greater confidence, interacted with peers more kindly, and participated in activities she had once resisted. Some whispered in amazement, while others quietly adjusted their own methods to mirror the patience and understanding they saw in him. The change was not sudden, but gradual and lasting, built on trust and consistent care. The janitor continued his work quietly, never seeking recognition or reward. He focused on being present and attentive, guiding her without imposing authority. He showed her that mistakes were part of life, that emotions could be acknowledged without fear, and that support could exist without conditions. Through this consistent presence, the daughter learned that trust and understanding were possible. Even in a world that often seemed cold and demanding, the daughter's father began to notice more than just her behavior. He began to notice her happiness and her growing sense of self. He saw her laughing, exploring new interests, and speaking more openly about her thoughts and feelings. It was a transformation he had longed for, but had never been able to achieve through money or professional help. He realized that the janitor, someone he had once overlooked, had done what no specialist, tutor, or nanny could accomplish. One day, the daughter approached her father, her expression serious but calm. She shared her feelings about past struggles, about how lonely and misunderstood she had felt, and how the janitor had helped her see that she could be heard and understood. The father listened in silence, humbled by the depth of her words. He realized that true care and guidance came not from authority or wealth, but from presence, empathy, and patience. This moment brought him a sense of relief and gratitude he had never known before. The janitor continued to support the daughter as she explored new experiences. He encouraged her to try things that challenged her comfort zone, always offering guidance but never forcing her. He celebrated her successes, large and small, and offered comfort during setbacks. Through these interactions, she learned resilience, responsibility, and the importance of kindness. The lessons were simple, lived experiences rather than lectures, and they left a lasting impact on her character. Other staff members began to change as well. They noticed that the environment in the building had shifted. Tension had decreased, and interactions were calmer and more respectful. The daughter's transformation influenced the culture around her, showing that patience, understanding, and human connection could affect more than just one individual. It was a subtle but powerful reminder that change often begins with small, consistent actions. The daughter's father took active steps to support the ongoing transformation. He reduced the pressure of strict schedules and excessive rules, allowing her to apply the skills she had learned from the janitor in her daily life. He observed her interactions, offering guidance when necessary, but also allowing her the freedom to navigate challenges independently. This balance of support and autonomy helped her build confidence and a sense of agency that had been missing for years. Over time, the daughter became more self-aware and capable of managing her emotions in ways that were constructive rather than destructive. She applied the lessons of patience, empathy, and understanding to her relationships with peers and staff. She became a source of positive influence, inspiring others to approach challenges with compassion and patience. The impact of the janitor's guidance extended beyond their relationship, touching the broader community around her. The janitor remained humble throughout this process. He never sought recognition, never demanded gratitude, and never allowed attention to alter his approach. His satisfaction came from witnessing the daughter's growth, from seeing her smile, and from knowing that she felt understood and supported. The transformation he facilitated was not about authority or power. It was about genuine human connection and consistent care. The daughter's father, reflecting on the journey, understood the profound lesson the janitor had imparted. He realized that wealth and power could provide opportunities, but they could not replace empathy, patience, and presence. The greatest change in his daughter's life had come from someone who was overlooked by society, someone who worked quietly and consistently, guided by compassion rather than authority. This realization reshaped his perspective on parenting, leadership, and human relationships. As the story reaches its conclusion, the daughter is transformed in ways that no amount of money or professional intervention could have achieved. She is calmer, more confident, and emotionally resilient. She navigates life with greater understanding, applying the lessons learned through her bond with the janitor. The environment around her has improved, and those who once doubted the janitor's influence now recognize the value of patience, empathy, and human connection. The janitor, ever humble, continues his work quietly. He remains a devoted father, a supportive presence, and a guiding figure for the daughter. He does not seek recognition or reward. His greatest satisfaction comes from knowing that he has made a lasting difference in someone's life. The impact of his guidance will continue to shape the daughter's future, influencing her decisions, relationships, and understanding of the world. The story concludes with a powerful message. True transformation does not always come from authority, wealth, or expertise. Sometimes the most profound change comes from those who are willing to be present, patient, and compassionate. The janitor, once unnoticed and undervalued, became the person who helped the billionaire's daughter find understanding, trust, and emotional strength. His actions demonstrate that genuine human connection can achieve what power and money cannot, leaving a lasting impact on individuals and the world around them. The billionaire's daughter, now capable of facing challenges with resilience and empathy, continues to grow. She applies the lessons learned from her bond with the janitor to her relationships, her decisions, and her approach to life. She becomes an example of the power of patience, trust, and human understanding. Her transformation serves as a reminder that sometimes the most overlooked people can create the most profound change, and that love, care, and presence can overcome even the greatest obstacles.